Hello students, welcome back to my channel, that is Continue Learning Database Concepts. In today's session we will be talking about normalization rules. So this is a very important topic. So we will be seeing them in two parts. In today's session we will be learning the half part of normalization, and then in the second half we will learn the rest of them. Okay, so let us start. So what is this normalization rule? How it is applicable to database? So normalization is a process of organizing the data. Okay. So database, as we all know, we have already studied it. Database is nothing but collection of data, and we always arrange them in the form of, when it comes to the relational database, we arrange them in the form of rows and columns. Now next part, that is after arranging the data, is nothing but how we are going to normalize it or arrange or organize the data. So it has to be in a particular order. It need to adhere to certain rules. So today we are going to learn what are those rules. Okay. So this includes creating tables and establishing relationship between those tables according to rules designed to protect the data and to make the database more flexible by eliminating redundancy and inconsistent dependencies. This is important. Okay. So when I say a database, it will have n number of tables, and also there is going to be a relationship between these two tables. So how they are going to be related in case of a relational database is nothing but through the help of attribute or through the help of columns, with it's something called as a foreign key. So that is how two tables will be related. So when there are many tables, how we are going to make sure that there are no redundancy and how we are going to make sure that the data is consistent is what this normalization rule takes care of. Okay, that is the reason we require this particular normalization rule. So when it comes to normalization, there are four types which we are going to learn. There are first normal form, there is second normal form, there is third normal form, and then there is BCNF. This BCNF is nothing but boys code normal form. Okay, in reality there are many more, there are fourth normal form, there are fifth normal form, but we will be mainly focusing on first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, and BCNF. So if any database follows the rules which comes under first normal form, then we will say that that particular database is in first normal form or 1NF. And there are certain set of rules which has to be followed in the second normal form. So if any database need to be in the second normal form, first thing is it has to be in the first normal form, and then it has to adhere to the rules which are related to the second normal form. Then we will say that the database in the second normal form. Similarly, if any database has to be in a third normal form, then first it should satisfy the first normal form, second normal form, and then the rules related to the third normal form. Then we will call that particular database in third normal form or 3NF. And BCNF is nothing but the database should follow all the rules which belongs to first NF, second NF, and third NF. And then if it satisfies the BCNF rules, then we will say that that particular database in BCNF. So at any given point, a database can be in first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, and BCNF, which means that if any database is in 1NF, then it that database can be in 2NF. Okay, not necessarily. If a database in 1NF, it has to be 2NF. It is not necessary, but of course it can be in 2NF. Let me draw it bigger. Okay, so I will say that a database in first NF, then it is in second NF, then third NF, and then BCNF. So I will say that BCNF is a more strict than 3NF. 3NF is more strict than 2NF, and 2NF is more strict than 1NF. Any database can be in 1NF, but it need not be in BCNF. Similarly, a database which is in BCNF has to be in 1NF. This is the rule which applies to all these four forms. Okay, so these are the different normal forms, that is 1NF, 2NF, 3NF, and BCNF. In today's session, we will be mainly focusing on 1NF and 2Nf. So let us see one by one. First, let us see what is a first normal form. Why do I call any database or any table in first normal form? So as you can see here, a row of data cannot contain repeating group of data. That is the rule for first NF. So what is the meaning? Each column must have a unique value. So each column cannot have a multiple values. So what is the exactly meaning of that? So before that, we should know what is a primary key. A primary key is a unique key. So this is unique for each row. So it is a unique key which can identify each tuple or a row in a database. So for example, in this case, if I'm taking student ID as a primary key, but here I have two values which is being detected using a single 401. I can detect this tuple as well as this tuple. So this will not satisfy the primary key concept. So that is what, when I say that first normal form, it cannot, a row of data cannot contain repeating group of data. Each column must have a unique value. Each row of data must have a unique identifier, that is primary key. Okay, so this is the example. So in this, what is happening is we are having repeated values. So that is what is not allowed. So that is why I will call this database is not in 1NF. That is, it is not in a first normal form. So how do I convert this particular database into a first normal form? Because I don't want redundancy in my database. So for that, this is the solution. What I will do is I have converted the old table which we have seen previously into these two new table. So as you can see here, what I have done is I have new student table as well as I have subject table. I have converted into two of them. So now what is happening is in new student table I have student ID, student name and subject. Okay, and also subject table I have subject ID, student ID as well as subject. So by doing this, what is happening is I need not repeat it. So here I can have a student ID as a primary key, which is unique, isn't it? So with this, what is going to happen is I'm not going to repeat the values. That is the reason I'm going to divide given table into two tables. By dividing that, now I can say that both the tables are in first normal form. So um, the solution, usually what we do for a given table, if it is not in any normal form, we will divide those tables into multiple tables, and by doing that we will try to make that relation into a required normal form. So now my tables are in required form. Okay, I hope this is clear. Next, let us see what is the second normal form. So first normal form is clear. So for any database to be in a second normal form, it has to satisfy first normal form, that it should not have a repeated values, and also it has another added rule. So a table to be normalized to second normal form should meet all the needs of the first normal form, like I said, and there must not be any partial dependency of any column on primary key. Now, what is this partial dependency? For example, consider that student ID as well as register number is the um, combined primary key. So primary key need not be a single column, it can be multiple columns. So suppose I have two columns as a primary key, then there should not be any dependency. That is, I should not be able to determine the name of a student just with the help of a register number. Then I will call it as a partial dependency. I should be able to determine the name of a student with the help of register number as well as the student ID. That is, it should be combined dependency on the primary key. We can read it here. It means that for a table that has concatenated primary key, each column in the table that is not part of the primary key must depend upon the entire concatenated key. So concatenated key is nothing that we are having more than one primary key. The column values which are not part of the primary key must be depending on the entire primary key, okay, concatenated key. So if any column depends only on one part of the concatenated key, then the table fails in the second normal form. Now let us see an example, it will be clear to us. So this is the example given in the textbook. So see here what is happening. Consider a table which is not in second normal form. Now this is already in a first normal form, as you can see, because here the primary keys are library ID as well as issue ID. So if I'm combining, there are no repeated values. Okay. So for 101 10 I have single value, 102 11 I have single value. Okay. So when I'm combining, I should not get this repeated value. Suppose if it was 101 here, 10 and 10 here, then I would say this is not in a first normal form. But remember, this is in a first normal form, but this is not in a second normal form. Why? So before understanding that, let us see this particular dependency of this table. So these two table as well as this is given. So what is given here? It is saying that library ID alone can determine the student name. So if I have a library ID, I'll be able to determine the name of the student. Similarly, if I have a issue ID alone, I can determine the issue name. Okay. And library ID and issue ID together will determine the book details, which means um, let me draw and show you. S name, that is your student name, is dependent on the library ID, okay, which I can independently determine it without the help of issue ID. Though issue ID and library ID are concatenated, they are the primary key together, and I can determine the issue name just with the help of issue ID. Again, library ID is not required. Alone it is determining whatever it is requiring. But book detail is totally depending on both the primary key. That is, it is depending on library ID as well as issue ID. But here is the problem for us. There is a partial dependency happening between the S name and issue name. So how am I going to solve that? So this is not allowed. That's why this is not in 2NF. So in order to rectify this, what we will do, like we did before, we are going to break the tables. So in this situation, I'm going to break my table into 3. Okay. So how am I going to do? So as we knew that library ID could determine S name, so I'm going to create a separate table which has library ID alone as a primary key, and it is S name is dependent on that. So now here it is satisfying 2NF. Similarly, I'm creating another table where issue ID is the primary key and issue name is totally dependent on issue ID. This also now satisfies the 2NF because there is a full dependency on the primary key. There is no partial dependency. Also, I'm going to keep the book detail which was dependent on library ID as well as issue ID. In this particular I will make library ID as well as the issue ID as a concatenated primary key. Again, this also satisfies, there is no this satisfies second normal form since there are no partial dependency. So we call any dependency as a partial dependency only when there is a more than one primary key. Okay, there are, for example, there are two columns which is forming a concatenated primary key, and another column is dependent only on a single part of that concatenated key. Then this particular relation is called as partial dependency, which is not allowed. That is the reason we have divided the old table into 3 tables and we have made a single IDs and multiple IDs wherever required. By doing this, now this is in 1NF as well as 2NF. So this is satisfying both the normal forms. Hence, we will call this table as this table is in second normal form. Okay, so this is all about your first normal form and second normal form. I hope this is helping in your studies. So in the next session, we will look into third normal form and voice chord normal form. So thank you for watching, students. Keep learning.